What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host, Phil. Phil, I have a very, very important question to ask you.
Oh, man.
Are you a Swiftie?
No.
Me
either. I mean, not opposed, I guess. I'm not anti, but I've never been, I guess, is the best way to put it. Yeah, never really listened to her music at all, but not a hater, I guess, at the same time. If you want to put it that way. Yeah,
I'm perfectly at work because we're talking about the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift phenomenon that's going all over the world. Their personal and relationship, I do not give two farts about.
True.
I don't give two farts about most people's relationships in general. I just don't need it shoved down my face and shoved down my mouth hole. Nobody else's relationships get brought up this much. I just don't know why this is being played up as much as it is. And I'm not the old man yelling at the clouds right now, like, get Taylor Swift off my screen. My point was just the man, the unbelievably talented individual, the man crafted from God, Ryan Reynolds, was also in attendance, and they just blew past him. Like, they didn't even acknowledge his existence was at the game, Phil. This is more of my gripe. It's less about Taylor Swift being shown on the TV so much. It's more about them just cutting Ryan Reynolds in half and just not showing him on the TV screen whatsoever, even though he was there and was in person the whole time as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair gripe. I have a friend at work who keeps me very up to date and detailed about Taylor Swift's life because she is a diehard Swiftie. So that's all my Taylor Swift knowledge, which is probably more than the average person with how much she keeps up with it. But yeah, Ryan Reynolds is pretty fantastic. So I do agree. You're not going to want to blow past him. Owner of Wrexham Football Club. Great show, great team, great fun to watch. Bills equivalent, arguably, overseas in the other football world. But yeah, I don't need it. I don't need it in my life, in my face. Just want to watch some football. Can't believe Kansas City only beat the Jets by 3. That's a hot topic.
Zach Wilson. Whew.
Zach Wilson coming on strong-ish, kind of. Not at all. He's not very good at football.
Yeah, that was about I'm not even going to go into that. I thought Zach Wilson would be an actual quarterback, and he was for one night. So if you want to yell at us and you're a Swiftie out there and you want to come after us, feel free. And here's where you can find us: Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on Twitter /X at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com and look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. We'll start with the Bills, the Taylor Swift-less Bills, but they didn't need her. They didn't need any of her songs, which I can't even think to name right now. Doesn't matter. They beat Miami to a pulp, 48-20. My main question here, Phil, and I guess I'm starting back-to-back questions for you, is how the heck did this Buffalo Bills team lose to that Zach Wilson and the Jets team? It's unbelievable that you're looking at a team who, for the first time in a Super Bowl era, has won 3 straight games by at least 28 points, and they lost to the 1-3. Yeah, the only win came against these Buffalo Bills. New York Jets, Phil, I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. It's like a couple years ago where they lost to Urban Meyer-led Jaguars. It hurts my brain, but I guess we don't really have to dive into that. What stood out for this game for you?
The entire team pretty much stood out to me. I mean, more than anything, I think the offense, obviously, you saw what they did was absolutely clinical, surgical, I don't know what you want to call it. Josh Allen, my goodness. And you just mentioned how he looked and how he played against the Jets compared to this. I don't think if you blurred out who the player was, who the teams were, and you just showed someone random video of those two games and said, that's the same quarterback, I don't know how many people would believe it, because Allen in that first game looked nothing like himself. He owned up to it, even though he does oftentimes, but he looked terrible in that Jets game. And now this last game, I don't think you could have asked for a more perfect performance from a quarterback. I mean, against Vegas, he had 36 passes. Against Washington, he had 32 passes. And in this game, scoring the most amount of points and putting up the most amount of yards, he only had 25 passes. So he's gone down in pass attempts, yet in this game went even higher in the amount of yards he's had, and the team put up even more points than they have all year. It was incredible. I mean, the entire performance all the way through, offense, defense, you look at the entire thing, it was just incredible. But Allen and that offense looked, again, just clinical, surgical, like they could do pretty much no wrong. They played incredible, and I thought what Dorsey was able to do and the kind of different looks that the offense kept giving to keep the Miami defense on their toes, and then again, just all the decisions Allen was making and allowing the game to really come to him finally. I mean, this is more of what we've been looking for, and it is very similar to the Vegas game where he just kind of, if it was a first down and they ran it and they got a couple yards and it was second and long, or whatever it was, he wasn't looking for that big bomb play until it really opened up, or until that was the kind of designed play. But he was just taking what the defense was giving him, and it's something that we've seen and wanted from his progression as a quarterback. And in this game, he proved that not only can he do it, he can do it with just incredible ability. And again, he looked just amazing.
Yeah, I'll start with the offense as well. It seemed like I gave Ken Dorsey a hard time with the Washington game. I thought it was a very badly coached game and called game from him. This one might go up there as the best connection between Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey, game plan and scheme-wise, that I have seen under his leadership in his whole tenure as offensive coordinator in the last, 1 1/4 year. I mean, last week, the defense, John always makes fun of me because of the way I say defense, so I'm trying to fix that. The defense last week just absolutely was clinical. And this week, the offense was that. I mean, the offense was just so good that Miami could not make any single mistake to keep up. And with doing that, the defense was able to just pin their ears back and just go for it. I mean, the game started with 5 straight touchdown drives. And I'm sitting at a friend's house when we were watching the game and just going, I hope you took the over, because this game's just going to go, it's just going to be high scoring, high flying all game long. And then something for Miami just stopped. And I don't know what happened, but they had 3 punts, a fumble, an interception, and 3 turnover on downs. You can't do that when the team that you're facing is just going up and down the field. I mean, the team's offense for the Buffalo Bills was 5 for 10 on third downs. They were extending drives. Like you said, Allen didn't have to do too much, only throwing it 25 times. He was just so pinpoint, and everything was just such precision that he didn't have to, overextend what he had to do. I mean, the game was over going into the fourth quarter. It was unbelievable, the performance they put on. 5 total touchdowns by Josh Allen, 4 through the air, 1 on the ground. The only knock really is they couldn't really get the running game going. Cook he was just getting stuffed in the backfield the whole time. But I wouldn't even put that on the offensive line, because they were so good protecting Allen. The times he only got sacked twice. So, I mean, it's 2 more than the last 2 games combined. So I thought the offense was just clinical. This was the best showing by the offense all season long, and you see that by the 48 points. But I just absolutely loved everything that they did against Miami, who, I mean, we can transition to the defense now. I'm trying, John. I'm trying. That they were just, once Miami scored those 2 touchdowns, the defense was just unbelievable, being able to shut down their threats and their speed game, except for one player.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill, 3 for 58 with a long of 20. I mean, going into this game, if you told me that's what he was going to leave the game with, that's incredible. That's exactly what you want. I mean, he's going to get his. He's an incredible player. You're not going to be able to blank him. He's going to get, the occasional big play. But if you can hold him to under 100 yards and no touchdowns, that's a good game for your defense. And even Waddle coming back, I mean, I know he was coming back from an injury, but 4 for 46, nothing spectacular. Their whole team, they had some longer plays for sure. I mean, they had longs of 20, 17, 15, 22, 22, 23. So they had some big plays in there. But for the most part, the defense just looked, again, like you just said, clinical with what McDermott's been able to do. I know the first three games, everyone was kind of saying, the offenses you're going up against, Jets without Rodgers, Vegas, and then Washington was nothing all that exciting for your defense to look really good. They're supposed to look really good in those games, and they did. But this game, I mean, Miami's coming into this game, putting up 70. They had perfect weather conditions for a game in Buffalo. This is more of a Miami type game than it is a Buffalo type game. The weather was gorgeous, which is good for both teams, but it's not like, you had a snow game where it's going to stop the Miami offense. They're coming into this game extremely hot, looking forward to trying to knock off the Bills and really take, a stranglehold a little bit early on in the AFC East. And for the Bills defense to, again, like you said, started really back and forth, started with those two quick touchdowns. But after that, I mean, just absolutely clinical. And the amount of turnovers they had, and not only the ones that they were able to get, but the ones they couldn't get. I mean, they had four forced fumbles, only recovered one of them. They had one interception, but, I mean, there was one that, White should have picked off, one right through his hands. It was that tip-up pass that they almost intercepted. So there were 2 or 3 interceptions left on the field, 3 fumbles literally left on the field. So there were a lot of plays the defense could have looked even more impressive than they did. But holding this Miami team, again, just put up 70, one of the highest scoring teams, the number 1 rated offense so far early in the season, holding them to under 3 touchdowns because they went for the 2-point conversion. So still 3 touchdowns, but holding them under 21 points, again, just the entire game. As a Bills fan, watching that team, it was just, again, clinical is the only real way to put it. I mean, all the way through offense, defense, everybody looked as pinpoint precision as you can against arguably, I mean, it's a very good Dolphins team. I mean, this is not a team, I know the score looks brutal for the Dolphins, but it's still a very good Dolphins team. Their offense is good, their defense is good. So for the Bills to do what they did looks just that much more impressive at the end of this game.
Yeah, Miami's going to be a threat all year long. They're not going away whatsoever. They're going to go back to the lab. Mike McDaniels is going to go into the weird lab that he lives in because he's just a weird dude. I love him, but he's a weird dude. And come out and try to figure out what went wrong with the offense, what went wrong with the defense to try to address it. So the Bills are going to see him in the final game of the season anyways, and it might be for the AFC East. But really, going back to the defense, I went into this one thinking if they can hold Miami under 30 points, they stand a very, very good chance. They held them to 20, and 14 of those points came in the first 2 drives that Miami scored. And then for whatever reason, still don't understand it, they went for 2. It was still going to be a 2-possession game regardless. I don't know why they went for 2. But the final thing that I said on last Wednesday's show saying how can Buffalo beat Miami, you got to get off the field. Miami was just 3 for 10 on third downs and 0 for 3 on fourth down. So the defense did exactly what they were supposed to do. And, like I said, the offense was just so good that the defense was just able to pin their ears back, go for the ball, cause havoc. The biggest thing that is the most, I don't want to even say concerning because Sean McDermott has just been unbelievable. I mean, he's wiped out any concerns I had about him taking over the defensive coordinator role and being head coach as well, is the running game and being able to control the running game. Last week, you saw Brian Robinson go for 7 for 70. This game, Achane went 8 for 101 and 2 touchdowns. And Mike McDaniels even said in the conference, I think today, was he thought he went away from the running game too early. Achane was just carving him up. I know he had half of his yardage on one big play, 55 yards, but that's an area where if between the running game and the passing game, if you're going to get carved up in one area, I'd rather it be the running game because it takes a lot longer to get down the field by running the ball rather than passing the ball in this NFL. It's just that is one area which I'm expecting them to adjust a bit. And it's not even that big of a deal because, like I said, if you're getting carved up in the running game, that's perfectly fine because your offense can score much quicker than, in the running game. So that's my main critique of this game is just how Achane was just carving him up.
Daquan Jones, though, my
God.
Do they have?
We said it last year, too, and he's just unbelievable.
Defensive line monster. My gosh. He was...
Extend that man.
Yeah,
Extend that man.
he was a terrifying human that game. And again, I mean, you want to talk about Brandon Bean missing some draft picks, fine, but when he finds these players, these like diamonds in the rough that he signs, and you kind of hope they hit, see what they have. Wow, he hit pretty hard. He is a incredible player. I think they said he was the highest pressure rate in the entire NFL for his position early in the season. I forgot what it was. It was like 60% or something. 60% of his snaps, somewhere around there, that he's hitting the pressure rate, and it was number one in the NFL for his position. So he's doing okay to start the season. He's just having a mildly okay start to the year.
Yeah, the only other thing that we really got to mention, and it hurts to talk about this one, Trey White. He went down with a torn ACL or Achilles. I apologize, Achilles, and that was confirmed Monday. It stinks. He was finally getting back to his pre-injury form, his all-pro form. You finally were seeing it on the field, and the play happened, and then they showed the replay, and I went, White is hobbling, and then they went, White's still down in the field, and I went, oh crap, and then you see him throw his helmet, and you went, yep, that's exactly what it is. And we were wondering if it's the same knee. Is it going to be an Achilles? What is it? And then they were talking about it's an ankle, and I'm like, oh man, it's Achilles. And I think somebody put in the group chat, they went, yeah, it's rumored that it's a possible torn Achilles. And we all went, if it's possible, it's never, there's never been a case where they're saying it's a possible torn Achilles where it comes back and it's not Achilles, because apparently you can do like a test, a 5-second test on the field, and know if you tore your Achilles or not. So it's gut wrenching to see a guy that worked that hard. And you heard the stories about how much mental issues he went through. I mean, the mental grind he went through to even get back after that knee injury, and then he's going to have to go through it again with this Achilles. I mean, he's going to come back. He's a grinder. He's going to be able to make it back to, back on the field. But once you tear your ACL, once you tear your Achilles, you might never return back to that type form again. It's just, this is a year where Buffalo is going for broke for a title, and to lose your top cornerback like that on a non-contact injury, it stinks.
Yeah, seeing him, it's always hard to watch an injury on the field, but a lot of times, even the serious ones, they're incredible humans, super athletes here that take pain like there's no tomorrow. Even the ones where they're really screaming, for the most part, they do things like this where they tear their Achilles or blow out their entire knee, and they're just kind of mildly okay with it. Obviously, they're going through a lot of pain, but they don't really show it. But to see White kind of not even really care about the pain that he was going through, but to just care that he's not going to be on the field for his teammates. He's not going to be on the field for this season. Again, like you said, the mental grind, everything that he fought for to get back in that lineup to play, like he was just starting to really get back to his form. And to watch, even before they showed any replays or anything, to watch his emotions, he was just shoving players away. Like he could tell it was pretty much over. It seemed like on the field, he was punching the ground, and again, it didn't look like it was from the pain he was going through. It looked like it was just emotional pain he was going through, knowing just what probably happened and what occurred. Especially, I feel like in those situations, you kind of can trust the player more than anything, and he seemed like he knew immediately that it's over for him this year. And I don't know, it stinks. It really stinks for him and for the team, but mainly for him, like you said, just the kind of player he is and the atmosphere he is and the just kind of emotional leader he is for that defense and that entire team and what he brings. It's just a real shame to lose him this early on. And again, for him to just be coming back from that injury to have to do it all over again, I cannot imagine the mental grind that kind of takes and toll it takes on a player. So really, really unfortunate. And again, just really stinks that it had to happen to a player who just getting back from a different injury, but same season-long extreme rehab to be playing at this level kind of injury.
Yeah, and this is what stinks about sports in general, is you got to look towards the next step. And if there's ever a time for a former first-round draft pick to step up, it's now, and it's Kaiir Elam. He's going to have the opportunity to take a role and run with it now that Tre'Davious White is done for the year. There's Dane Jackson, there's Christian Benford, and there's Kaiir Elam, currently the only legit cornerbacks on the roster right now that are going to be contributing any meaningful minutes. If he is the player that the Buffalo Bills hope for and drafted for, this is his time to step up, and you're finally going to be able to see what he is capable of. It stinks for the reason that he's going to be on the field, but if he's going to pan out to be anything and anything of value, this is his time to shine, is to step up in that role, because it's just asking for somebody to take it and run with it. But we'll know more about it. Next game is in London, Phil, so hopefully you and everybody else sets their alarm clock for an early game in London, and hopefully it's not a Toy Story one, because that was an epic failure to start. I know they kind of got it back going after like the end of the first quarter into the second, but by then a lot of people had tuned out, and I definitely had tuned out. I was excited about it, and let's fix that for next year, because how much they blew that up and everybody wanted to watch it. It was a big letdown.
Yeah, and before we move on from the Bills game, there's one other player that needs to be mentioned, because he is quietly having quite literally a perfect season. Tyler Bass has not been mentioned enough. I know he's had 2 off the uprights that have gone off and in, but they still went in, and he is currently on the season 9 for 9 on field goals, 3 of 3 from 50 plus, with 16 of 16 extra points. The man is quite literally perfect on the year. No one's saying anything about it because the Bills are just blowing teams out of the water. So, I mean, his field goals are great, but so far they haven't necessarily been needed. So he's just quietly perfect on the year, but we're gonna bring it up here because he deserves to be talked about just a little bit.
Special teams player of the month for September as well.
Yes. So,
and you also don't ask how, you ask how many, and he's perfect so far. So he's perfect. There you go. But yeah, on our next show on Wednesday, we'll go over the Jaguars game in London, and they're already there, and they're just camping out because they're the London Jaguars right now, because that's the only team that stays there constantly. But we'll move on to the Sabres here. Phil, they had a lot of preseason games. We're not going to dive into each one of them. We're just going to talk about what we've seen in the 4 of them. Tuesday, 4-1 win over Boston. Wednesday, 5-2 loss over Toronto. Thursday, yes, 3 games in a row and 4 in 5 games. Thursday, lost 3-1 versus Pittsburgh, and Saturday they won 4-3 versus Columbus. 2 games remaining. First one is Thursday. First overall game for the season is Thursday, the 12th versus the Rangers. It is a home game. So, Phil, what are your thoughts so far on the team through preseason with 2 games to go? Is there any players that are kind of standing out? Any players that you need to step up? Anything like that? I got my ears to the ground to listen to what you're going to be saying.
Your ears are cold because they're on the ice. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Yeah, that is a good metaphor for it because we are talking hockey.
Yeah, thank you. Devin Levi, the hero that he is, looking real good so far in preseason. I have no idea what to expect from him season long, but the Sabres defense did improve in theory over the summer with some of their acquisitions, so he should have a little bit stronger defense in front of him, and so far he's looked every bit what he did last year, and now getting his first real offseason with the team. I'm interested to see just how much of a step he can take forward. I know he's still very young. He's still developing a lot. So he's going to have a strange season, I think, only because the expectations, I think, are through the roof, not only from me, but from the team and kind of what everybody wants the Sabres to be. I think because they were so close last year, everyone kind of sees the Sabres as a team that can make playoffs this season. They have the pieces that are there. The one thing that they were missing last year was goaltending. So I think we've had the really long, slow developing build of this team for a couple of years now, and you're starting to see it really pay off. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on this team to finally make playoffs, and I feel bad because I think Levi is kind of just starting, so he's a little bit more at the early stage of where he would, I think, prefer the Sabres to be in them coming into the season. If he was coming in last year as a full season where, we go into that season not really with the high expectations. If they made playoffs, great, but we don't expect them to make playoffs. I think it'd be a little bit easier for him this year. I think everyone's going to have just a lot of pressure on this team and on him to really push and get that next step and finally make playoffs. But so far in preseason, he's looked really good. He's looked kind of exactly how we did at the end of last year or better. So So far, no worries, and he seems to handle pressure extremely well. So I'm not overly worried about him, but there's definitely going to be growing pains with a goalie this young, who I don't think anyone really expected to step into this role right away. But here he is, and we'll see what he can do. But he's been a lot of fun to watch so far in the preseason. And the other big one is obviously Benson. He looks incredible. He's been on the top line quite a bit. He's been, captaining the top power play as well, and he looks like he's fitting right in for, again, I think he's 18 years old, so a very young player playing with NHL players, playing against NHL talent. He doesn't look lost at all, and I think that's the biggest thing you see with him. He doesn't look out of his element. He doesn't look out of his league. He looks like he fits right in, which is scary in the way that I don't know what you do with his development. I mean, if he goes back, if he doesn't make the Sabres, he's on junior, so that doesn't really help his development, but you don't want to rush him to an NHL contract and get him going and then, kind of slow his development at the NHL level because he's playing immediately. But so far through preseason, he's looked really good, and he's looked, again, like he fits right in, so I don't think you'd really be harming his development all that much to get him a spot on the team potentially, but we'll see kind of how he looks a little bit longer. And then Savoy obviously hasn't played. He's injured right now, but he's another one kind of getting lost in the fold a little bit as far as this roster construction goes because he is injured, so he's not really getting the preseason looks like Benson is, but he's another player that has a chance possibly-ish to make the roster if he can come back anytime soon and just kind of see what he can do as well. But he's just another name out there that I think is kind of completely disappeared, and obviously because he's not currently playing.
Yeah, I think Levi and Benson are the two big name ones. I'll just add two things to both of them. Levi, he should be in the running for the Calder, the Rookie of the Year. I don't think he's going to be in line for the Vezina, but I mean, who knows? But yeah, definitely in line as long as he gets enough games played for the Calder. I mean, he's a smaller goaltender, but like we've said all towards the end of last year, he just has the ability to know exactly where he needs to be, kind of like Ryan Miller-esque. He makes those type of saves, but he doesn't seem to let those squeakers through. For Benson, I know Granato mentioned that they still are going to slow roll everything. They don't want to rush anybody's, ascension into the league, but he gets 9 games. Give Benson the 9 games. If he's ready, keep him on the team. Keep him with Skinner and Tage Thompson. Move Tuck down to Middlestad's line so you got somebody playing with Middlestad and Olofsson who can rip it. I think that just spaces everything out where you get 3 great goal-scoring lines right down the middle. And I would absolutely love that. Just 2 more. I think Eric Comrie has earned the number 2 for me. I don't know what you're going to do with UPL, but I've said it all offseason. Ship him out. Send him to Tampa Bay because their goaltender, Valesky, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I'm blanking right now. But
I don't know why
he's going to be done
either.
For like 6 months, 6 weeks, something like that. He's out for a while. So why don't you just ship him off to Tampa Bay? And then he's the backup out there. And then you don't have to worry about him being great. So there you go. There's a way to clear that roster spot because I don't want you to carry 3 goaltenders. I've been saying it for so long, but I thought Comrie has definitely earned the number 2 role for me. And then just 2 other players. Brandon Byro, he should get an opportunity if there are injuries, and at least that, in my opinion, he should get the first look up from AHL, one of the first looks. And then the last one is Ryan Johnson. He has not looked lost whatsoever. He looks such like a mature player, not a rookie out there. Yes, he's coming in. He's played all 4 years at Michigan, so it's not like he's coming in, like 18 years old like Benson is, even though Benson doesn't look like a rookie. He will develop even further in the AHL. I don't think he's ready for the NHL yet, and I don't think there's a spot for him, but he could easily jump into a third pairing defenseman and you wouldn't miss a beat. I don't think he's going to be a big time point producer, but he is a very reliable defender back there, and I'm excited to see what he can bring, and I think he's one of those lost pieces because he was in college so long, and you were wondering if he was going to sign, if he wasn't going to sign because he was that 4th year, and he finally signed. He's a former first-round draft pick, so those don't just grow on trees.
Yeah, the other 2 quick players, Jokiharju's got 2 goals in the last 4 games, so that's just exciting for him. I know he's been a rough kind of spot for you on the defensive end of things. I think he started playing a little bit better the second half of the season last year, so hopefully he can roll that into this year and just really pick up a little bit. I mean, I think we're both looking for a little bit more out of him. And then Olofsson, I kind of forgot he was still on the team after all of the summer trade talks. So the fact that I'm even seeing him out there is just kind of weird. And I wonder how that's going to all play out. Just, I don't know. I know players obviously try to put that stuff aside and teams try to put that stuff aside, but they also know it happens. So I wonder how well with all these young guys, again, Savoy, Benson, I wonder, and then even eventually when you get, oh my gosh, Jack Quinn back, thank you. I mean, just where does he fit on this team? And just, I don't know, do they have a spot for him kind of thing. So I wonder how it's going to work with him if he is in the starting lineup for the start of the season, just, what he's going to be able to bring and how he's going to be able to assist the team, because it seems kind of like he's the awkward man out right now in a weird way.
I agree. I think if Jack Quinn hadn't gotten hurt, I don't think Victor Olofsson's on this team. But that's just me. I have no idea anything further about that. But on our next show, we'll dive more into the final 2 preseason games, and we will be recording the day before the Sabres season kicks off. So that's very exciting. Sabres hockey right around the corner and high expectations for this team. So, Phil, moving on to Fantasy Blitz. We're trending in the right direction. We are trending in the right direction. Adam Thielen, who I had, he was ranked 30th before. He finished 22nd. And Zach Moss, 24th. He finished 20th. So, Phil, on the right trajectory. I won in CFFL in the important league. We both advanced in Guillotine. Things are on the right trajectory. Phil, week 5, who is a player outside the top 12 and outside the top 10 of quarterback and tight end that you believe is going to finish inside that range this coming week in week 5?
I'm having the single worst CFFL season I have ever had.
You really are.
It's very disheartening. My roster appears decent, and they're terrible. So anyway, my pick is actually pretty exciting after seeing your pick, because we can watch one game and watch both of our picks. That's fun. The pick I'm going with, Breece Hall. He is currently 30th on the year as a running back. He's coming off of a 6-4, 56 game with 3 catches for 13 yards against Kansas City. Up next, they play the Broncos, who are currently the easiest matchup for running back position. Khalil Herbert just torched them for 18 carries, 103 yards and a touchdown, and another 4 catches for 19 yards and another touchdown. Herbert's been okay this year, but I don't think he's been that good, let alone 100 yards. So this is a game that I think, especially with Hall coming off a very productive 6 for 56. I know it's only 6 carries, but at the same time, he looked really good on those 6 carries. So I think this is a game where he can finally have another game. Don't really want to bring this one up, but like he did against the Bills, where he can bust off a few really long runs and finally have a pretty decent game.
Yeah, your fantasy football team is kind of like a butterface. It's everything butterface. So I know that's mean. On paper, it's perfect. It was the only metaphor I could think of. But yeah, I like the pick, and I think you also picked it for the hopes because he is also on your fantasy football team.
Oh, he'll be benched. Don't worry about that.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. He will break off.
Barkley will be back, hopefully, maybe. Who knows?
He should be back. But I went a guy that probably a lot of people have never even heard of, Jaleel McLaughlin. He's currently 37th. He plays for the Denver Broncos, in case nobody knows about that, and he's a running back. Last week, he was 7 for 72 and then 3 for 32 with a touchdown through the air. He's facing the Jets. And I know the Jets have a very good defense, but Pacheco just ran him over as well, over 100 yards, first time in his career. I don't believe Javonte Williams is going to play. I think he's going to miss this game because of that hip flexor he had. And P. Ryan has done absolutely nothing. Sean Payton, he might not be the best coach anymore, but he gets running backs to do stuff in his history. I know they haven't been doing much right now, but Jets are allowing 148 rushing yards right now through the season. I think McLaughlin, Peyton just keeps talking him up. Every time he mentions the running back room, McLaughlin's talked up. So he is most likely available on your free agency waiver wire. He's probably going to go for a bit of money. At least in ours, I bet you he's going to go for a bit of money. He is a guy that's probably available, and he might be one of the first guys that we've actually mentioned on this show that you can go out in free agency, go pick him up, put him in your starting lineup, and he's going to be a top 12 because this is a PK guarantee. He's going to be a top 12 running back next week. And if I'm wrong, I will wear my hat like a rally cap next week. There you go.
I was wondering where you were going with the hat. And
I was trying to think of something, a punishment quick that I could do on air. So a rally cap hat the whole show is going to be very uncomfortable with my headset.
I wonder who's going to finish better just between our two running backs in the exact same game.
I would assume yours, just because I like to be very bold on statements, and then they never fall through.
As has been happening with our Fantasy Blitz the entire season so far.
100%. Yeah.
Hopefully they both just hit.
We're both
hopefully they both hit.
This
is the week. We're both going to hit. And that's all that matters.
We need to help our pride and our confidence. But we'll move on to our final segment here. Buffalo Bandits, they signed 3 guys. 2 of them just appear to be camp bodies, and another guy just needed a new deal because of a trade that brought him in. Dan Kurkowski and Brian Willis. I mean, they are both on 1-year deals. They are both forward. Kurkowski played 4 years with Mercyhurst and 1 with Canisius. And then Willis, he's 5'8", 180. He played for UMass and Canisius. And then the third guy, Steve Orleman, signed a 2-year deal just on Monday. He came over in that 3-team trade that sent Knetsnikoff out to Saskatchewan and brought the 2 picks and Orleman over here. So he just needed a new deal. I believe Nanticoke and Adler are the only 2 other ones that are currently not reached the point where they would be RFA status, but they do need new deals. So he was in that same category. But Phil, any talk about these 3 guys that just re-up since our last show?
No, not really. Like you said, I think for the most part, you're looking at camp bodies that, I mean, there's always going to be battles in camp, so anything can happen, but we've talked about it over 600 times at this point. This roster is just crazy loaded, and we still don't know what they're going to do with the players that they do have on this roster. So anyone coming in, I mean, it's not even late, they haven't started practice or anything, so it's not like they're getting a late start or anything. But even still, just with the amount of talent they have on this team, it'd be great for these guys to fight for a spot, and that's exactly what they'll do. That's why they're being brought in, so you never know what's going to happen. Someone like this could spark, but at the same time, it's just a ridiculously loaded lineup, which is great to say over and over because it's our team. So it's fantastic to say that the Bandits headed into this year once again have a very loaded lineup.
Yeah, the only thing I really got to mention, and it'll be really, really quick, it's 2 things. One, Steve Orleman and Kevin Orleman are 2 different players. Yes, they both played for the New York Riptide last year. Yes, their both last names are Orleman, but they're 2 different people. I know I was seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh, didn't he just sign with New York?" No, that was Kevin. That was Kevin. 2 different people, siblings. Yes, I get it. And the second thing is, we're 4 goaltenders in camp. It's training camp. They bring in bodies for competition. Don't be so alarmed that you're seeing 4 goalies. It's like Buffalo. Why Buffalo Sabres? Why weren't people complaining that there was 6 or 7 goaltenders in training camp for the Buffalo Sabres? It's the same thing. It's competition. They're bringing in bodies for competition, and you're going to need those for the preseason games they play as well. So don't be so shocked that there's 4 goaltenders in camp. It's going to be a battle to see who backs up Matt Vince. That's all I got to say with that. So, Phil, before we move
on real quick, I do have a question about that, though. So I guess it kind of links into what we're about to talk to in a moment, but trying to get it out there early. So Orleman getting a 2-year deal versus a 1-year deal, and some of these other players that they brought in, some of their recent draft picks, like you mentioned, Konstantopoulos got a 1-year deal. Some of these other players got 2-year deals. What is the difference? Obviously, 2 versus 1. I completely get that. But as far as, I don't know, keeping them, cutting them, why are some players, do you think some players getting 2-year deals versus 1-year deals for what we would consider similar-ish players fighting for roster spots? Do you think the 2-year deal kind of solidifies them a little bit more than these 1-year deals, or like why would some players get 2 and some players get 1?
I'm sure there's something behind the scenes, like contract wise. I'm sure there's something built into like that. I have been noticing, and again, I don't have the handbooks and all that kind of stuff. It seems like a lot of the rookies on their first year deals tend to sign 2-year deals over 1-year deals, and then after those 2-year deals end, they go 1-year deals. I honestly have no idea. I'm sure there's a reasoning behind that. I'm sure people more on the inside know more than me. I would assume that. I guess I don't even want to assume that it's more like, hey, we believe in you more than, they signed Steve Orelman to a 2-year deal, and then they signed Evan C to a 1-year deal. I don't know the whole situation behind all that. I honestly don't know, because in the end, if you're cut, you don't make any money. So
Right.
It's I have no idea. I honestly don't know. 2 looks better than 1, and I don't know. I really don't.
For the
know.
record, I did offer to ask you this question off of the podcast. You were like, "No, hit me with it while we're recording." I was like, "All right."
I am a man that's not afraid to admit when he doesn't know. I'm not afraid to look dumb on air, and my face probably looks stupid as I was trying to put 2 and 2 together on this one. Yes, no joke for the 2-year deal versus 1-year deal, but whatever. Yeah, it's something, another part of the league that we don't have insight to, that I don't know. I honestly don't know, and quite frankly, Phil, don't really care. Really don't really care.
All right, fair. I guess that kind of doesn't really answer it at all, but we can move on.
I tried. I guess as much as I could. But Phil, with it being October now, training camp start at the end of the month. We thought about it and talked about it for a while now. Why not just check in on what the roster could look like if the season started, I don't know, tomorrow and not in 2 months? So I know that a lot of the rosters out there for the different teams are not updated. Guess what? I've been keeping track. Yours truly. So there are currently 34 players either on the team, signed deals, or their rights are still with the Buffalo Bandits. We need to chop that down to 25. Now, that will include 21 active players and 4 practice squad players, because we're going off past years. I don't think they're going to adjust it this year, but I don't think they've also announced all that stuff, because they announce everything at the last minute. But we're going to trim that 34 down to 21 active, 4 practice squad players, and then kind of who is our top bubble guys that, there's a holdout list, there's an IR list, there's a PUP list, there's protected players list, there's a bunch of other lists, and because we don't not on the inside and we don't know all this information, we're not going to touch those lists. We're just going to build our active list, our practice squad list, and then our next bubble guys. So if guys go on the IR that we had on our active lineup or our practice squad, these are going to be the next guys that we think are going to be stepping in. So, Phil, let's start with the forward group. There's a lot of forwards on this team right now. We got Kyle Buchanan, Josh Byrne, Chris Cloutier, Dan Kurtzkowski. I apologize. I was nailing these names before, and then I get behind a mic and I flub them. Dan Kurkowski, Sam LaRue, Brad McCulley, Brandon Robinson, Christian Watts, Brian Willis, Tehoka Nanticoke, Chase Frazier, and then Dane Smith. So, Phil, what forwards are making your active team?
I'm just going to pretty much run it back to their championship final here, and I'm looking at your list and kind of playing off your list a little bit, because there's only a couple I disagree with, or I'm going to, I guess, slightly challenge you on. But as far as forwards, Kyle Buchanan, Tehoka Nanticoke, Dane Smith, Chase Frazier, Josh Byrne, Chris Cloutier, Brad McCulley, depending on Brandon Robinson's health. I think those two are slightly interchangeable. Again, we saw what Brandon Robinson could bring to the team when he was active, healthy, looking incredible, and he didn't even really get a chance to play with the top forwards on the team. So I think it'd be interesting to see what he can bring if he's healthy, but Brad McCulley also played incredible in that role. So I think those two are interchangeable. Outside of that, you're pretty much just running back the elite offense they brought to the championship finals and those East finals where they demolished Toronto and then took care of Colorado. So I think you're pretty much just running that back as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the amount of forwards that are on this team, and when you first look at it, and when you first look at, like, oh man, there's 34 total players on this, how the heck are you going to chop it down? I found it actually a bit easier. There are some tough decisions towards the bottom of the 21 and 4, but I am in the same category as you. Those are the 7 forwards I'm bringing back as my active roster if team started tomorrow and I needed to enter my cuts if I was the GM. Kyle Buchanan, Nanico, Smith, Frazier, Byrne, Chris Cloutier, and then McCulley. Those are my 7. And then stay tuned because you'll hear Brandon Robinson's name a little bit later. But Phil, we'll move on to transition here. With the transition players that are currently on the either have their rights or their signed contract with the Buffalo Bandits, Austin Bloomberg's, Dalton Solver, Nick Weiss, Max Adler, and Ian McKay. Who are the transition players currently making your active 21-man roster?
Yeah, active is the key word here. I think there's going to be some fights toward the bottom of this list, like you said.
Agreed.
But as far as active goes, Nick Weiss, Max Adler, Ian McKay. Again, we've talked about it 100 times plus. This team is pretty much going to be able to run it back with a few things being adjusted here or there. But this is a section of their game where you're just simply going to run it back. Ian McKay was MVP-ish worthy and transition player of the year worthy last year with the ability he had to step up, play offense, and play just absolutely incredible shutdown defense. Max Adler really came into his own as a face-off specialist last year. Nick Weiss is exactly what Nick Weiss is, an incredible lacrosse player. So I think those 3 running it back again.
Yeah, I was trying to find a way if I could squeeze a Bloomberg's or a Solver in, because I really like Solver when we were playing in New York, and he pretty much was shutting down Jeff Teat in that whole second half, and I really think he adds value to the team. It's just, it goes back to what we were saying all year, all offseason, all last year, all the offseason before that. The spots are just such limited availability this offseason, so in training camp it's just going to be a battle. But those are the 3 names I have as well. Again, Adler still needs to sign a contract with the team. He's currently just has his rights with the team right now because, again, no RFA status for him yet because he doesn't have 3 full seasons played with the NLL yet. But, again, I think he stepped up in the playoffs. He scored that major goal that the roof came off the building in that one. Ian McKay, like you already mentioned, then Nick Weiss, unsung hero and leader of that team. So those are the 3 transition players I have as well. We'll move on to the defense, and this is where the team is just absolutely stacked. Zach Belter. Got Adam Bomberry, Frank Brown, Duncan Carte, Justin Martin, Carter McKenzie, Steve Priolo, Justin Robinson, Ryan Sharkey, Matt Spanger, Bryce Sweeting, Cam Wires, and Dylan Robinson. Just an absolute star-studded defense core that allowed 4 goals in the championship game 3. Phil, who are your defensemen making your active roster?
This is where it gets interesting to me. I think there's going to be some really solid camp battles with some of these guys. There are a few to me that I have on the bubble compared to your list a little bit. So for the 9 that I have, Adam Bomberry, Justin Martin to me played incredible in playoffs, but he was a little bit shaky during the season. So I think he's going to be interesting. I think he's one that I don't think the team has any interest in really pushing out anytime soon, but I think he's going to be an interesting camp battle with some of these young, incredible defensemen that they are bringing in. Steve Priolo, Justin Robinson, Matt Spanger, Bryce Sweeting. Dylan Robinson, I do agree with you about Cam Wires. I think he will have the opportunity to make that active roster, and I think he should. And then the other one that I think to me could be pushed out, even though, again, I don't think the team's actively looking to replace this player, but I think Frank Brown, with his injury history over the last few seasons, not really being able to stay healthy. I think some of these younger first-round draft pick defensive players that have looked really good as rookies, and obviously as they're not rookies yet, but headed into their first camp and everything, they've looked, from what we've seen, that they've been able to do so far in their lacrosse careers, like they can absolutely make a push for this active roster. So I think he's another one to me that could be on the bubble as far as making the active roster or not.
Yeah, I mean, I have those top 8 as well. Bomberry, Martin, Priolo, Robinson, Spanger, Sweeting, Dylan Robinson, and then Wires. It was that 9th defenseman that was tough for me because I was trying to find a way to get Belter on, and either Belter or McKenzie as well. So it was a 3-way battle for me. It was between Belter, McKenzie, and Frank Brown. And I leaned with Frank Brown just because, they kept him on the PUP list all last year. They re-signed him to another deal, and I believe he signed before Belter and McKenzie as well. So they obviously wanted him back. He was a hometown guy. He can also help in their transition game, which I haven't seen Belter play yet, and I haven't seen McKenzie be able to do that in the transition game. So that's why I kind of lean more Brown rather than McKenzie over Belter. So that's why he squeezed in as my ninth defenseman. And I know last year, I looked at the roster last year. They had 7 forwards, 4 transition, and 8 defensemen. This year, you and I both, it looks like we both have the same active roster so far, is 7 forwards, 3 transition, and 9 defense. So we pulled somebody from the transition, put him back on defense, but Frank Brown can be that guy out the back door. Dylan Robinson can do the same thing. I know Cam Wires is pretty good in that with the long stick in PLL as well. So there's some guys in the back end that, yes, they might have a D next to their name, but they could also be a transition player. So, Phil, goaltenders, here comes the battle. Who are the 2 goaltenders on your roster? Because I did the math. You got 19 players on your team so far. Who are the goalies that are making your team?
I am sticking with the goalies that have been here for years. I think Orleman will be a fun camp battle. I think he will probably, in some way, shape, or form, still make this roster. Maybe not active, but he'll be around. I don't think they traded for him, even though they got some great draft picks in return on top of his addition. I don't think they traded for him to lose him right away. Obviously, they signed him, but we both just kind of mentioned how signing doesn't always mean everything. So I think he can still be cut, but at the same time, I think they brought him in for a reason. But to me, it's going to be Matt Vince, number 1, and Delvin Shanahan, number 2. I think Shanahan, again, talked about it a lot when Orleman first came in. I don't think he's done anything to show the Bandits that he does not deserve the number 2 spot. I think a camp battle will happen between those 2, and I think whoever's the best one in the Bandits' eyes will come out on top. They're both 24 years old. They're both in pretty similar spots as far as developing as NLL goalies, so I think it'll be a good battle. But to me, Shannon's been in the system for a while. He knows Vince. He knows how to, handle the bench duties. He's been a part of this team. He's coming off an absolutely incredible summer of goaltending for himself. So I just don't think he's done anything to lose the job. And until the Bandits see him do something or Orleman really step up into that position, I think to me they're just going to run it back with Vince and Shanahan, given the chemistry those two have and the chemistry that Shanahan has on the bench with all those players already.
I can't believe we have the same 21. And we did not discuss this before the show started. I know we always have the preference.
There's a couple.
But there's a couple that are up in the air, but I think for the majority of it, we have the same 21, which is very shocking to me. I think the practice squad is going to be where we debate a bit. But yeah, I have the same 2 goalies, Matt Vince, Delvin Shanahan. Like you said, I don't think there's really much more I can add. Matt Vince, the greatest of all time. There's no comparing. He's going to retire when he chooses to. And Delvin Shanahan, like you said, he hasn't really done anything. I thought he performed very well in summer ball. It's definitely going to be a battle. I'm not handing it to Shanahan. I'm not saying that, hey, just because he's been on the team before, just because the team has invested so much time and effort into developing him, that he is just going to win it. I think it's going to be a real battle because I think Steve Orleman has the ability to be that backup and possibly take over for Matt Vince when the time does come. And I'm not wishing that anytime soon. No offense to Shanahan and Orleman, but Matt Vince is Matt Vince. There's only one of them. But yeah, I think the edge goes to currently Delvin Shanahan just because of the history with the team and his development, which has just been on an upward trajectory so far. So Phil, practice squad, you get 4 spots. I think this is where we're probably going to differ a bit. Who are your 4 names on your practice squad?
So this is where, I'm just going to go with an open discussion here as far as players that I think can be on the practice squad. I guess we'll go with that. So this is where, this is always going to be where there's going to be a ton of battles for position throughout their camp. This is where it kind of goes down. We know, especially with this roster, with coming off a championship, that their starting roster is pretty loaded. We've talked about it 102 times now, but practice squad and us wishing that they had 10 practice squad spots, this is the reason why, because there's only 4, and these battles are going to be really intense because I think there are a lot of guys who can push for these spots. So to me, I guess I will rattle off some players I think can make this practice squad. Sam LaRue's been around for a long time. He was used a little bit last year. I think they're still very interested in his development. He's came into the league extremely young, and they've held on to him for quite a long time now. So I don't think they're giving up on him. Not saying that his development's going poorly by any means. We just haven't really seen him on the field, given the talent that they've had and the kind of lack of injuries they had to the right side of the offense. It was mainly on the left side where he doesn't play, so he didn't really get a huge chance despite all the injuries last year. But he's been around for quite a while. Brandon Robinson, I absolutely love as depth, either him or McCulley. Again, I think those two are pretty interchangeable on the left side, but given all the injuries they had last year, if he can stay healthy, I think he's a big addition and something that they need to kind of continue pushing for. But this is where, to me, it gets interesting. I mean, Orleman, we just talked about either him or if Orleman wins it out, Shanahan, do you keep 3 goalies, including one on the practice squad? I think that's going to be tough. It's going to be a really close call. I think they're going to, again, with the investment that they have in Orleman and Shanahan, both of them, I don't think they'd want to lose either. So I think you have to find a way to somehow put them on the team. And if you're going to, it's going to be practice squad. But outside of that, there's going to be an insane battle for at least this last spot. I like LaRue quite a bit. I could see with some of these younger guys, him also getting just pushed really hard to make this team this year. So of those players, you already mentioned what Wires is doing, making the active team. He is a 6'5", 220 defenseman. He was extremely good in a one-on-one type of defensive game. He said he plays really physical, and he likes to kind of hit people around. That's the kind of defense we're looking for. Zach Belter, 6'5", 225. Sounds pretty similar to me. Cam Wires had 79 caused turnovers, ranked 5th in his team's history. Zach Belter coming into this league with 62 caused turnovers, also very similar. So those two players, Belter and Wires, to me, is going to be an extremely big camp battle. They are very similar in size, very similar in talent, both shut down one-on-one defenders, both with very equal caused turnovers, which is a huge thing that you and I go after. Bloomberg, 6'2", 200-pound transition player. That's the big thing with him, is he's one of the only transition players on this bubble and a true transition player. He had 24 goals, 25 points for the Buffaloes in the UCBLL with 49 points total. So the Bandits have had a very good look at him, and as a transition player, putting up 24 goals is really impressive. The one to me that is going to be arguably the most interesting to watch out of all these players, because of he's an offensive player, so that's going to make it really tough. But Christian Watts, 6'4", 193-pound forward. So he's not the biggest, but he is quite big at 6'4". And at the same time, he finished 98 points with his collegiate career, which is great. But for the 2 years that he played in the UCBLL, where the Bandits get a very close look at him in kind of indoor lacrosse, he had a league record 115 points in 2 years, 63 goals, 52 assists. He's a player that I think is going to be very interesting as far as a roster push this year. I think if they want to keep an extra forward, I think it's going to be a very interesting battle between him and LaRue. I could not find, which, again, why this is so difficult to find. I couldn't find if he was a lefty or a righty, so that could be a huge kind of game changer if they want to keep one lefty, one righty on the practice squad, which I would assume they would want to do. So I think between Watts, LaRue, and Robinson, depending on what Watts is, lefty or righty, that's going to be interesting. And then, again, you have some really good defenders, and then Bloomberg as transition. So this is where it gets really, really difficult, and that's not even mentioning Carter McKenzie, who I am a huge fan of, and Dalton Silver, who you already mentioned, another transition, shutdown defender type player, who you're a big fan of. So this is where it gets just depressing more than anything. I would like every single player I just mentioned, I want to make this team, including Carter McKenzie and Dalton Silver. So it is, whoever gets cut, it's going to be depressing. I'm going to be excited for the players that make it, but all of these players seem like they could have really solid lacrosse careers on this team. I think every single one of them, practice squad or active, is going to be pushing. I think it's going to be a really interesting camp, but again, there's just only so many spots on this active roster with how loaded this team is.
I am going to hold your feet to the fire. I need 4 names you're putting on your practice squad.
Okay, 4 names. Give me Christian Watts, because I'm excited for what he can do as a forward. So he's going to be one of my forwards. Brandon Robinson. Gosh, you know how much I like young players, so you're really killing me with this.
Got 2 spots
I do
left.
love Brandon Robinson, though, so I'm going to keep him. Christian Watts. I'm going to keep Zach Belter because I love him as well. And then, Oh man, Bloomberg as transition, or the goalie that they spent some investment in. Either goalie that they have invested. I guess, man, I really do not want 3 goalies on this roster, practice squad or active, but I guess we will keep a bonus goalie instead of Bloomberg, even though I really like Bloomberg as a transition player.
So that's Orleman.
Yeah, we're going to go with Christian Watts, Brandon Robinson, Zach Belter, Steve Orleman. There's my 4.
So we do have a change. I agree with everything you said. It's like we knew
It's
this
just
going in.
depressing.
This is why we said
frustrating
so often,
and depressing.
condense your picks, because this team is so tough to make, and that's why I've been arguing for so long now. There should be more spots for these guys to
Just
develop on this team.
Give me
that
one
drafts
more
them,
so I can put Bloomberg. Give me 5 practice squad spots.
So for my practice squad, I have one difference than yours. I have Sam LaRue, I have Brandon Robinson, I have Zach Belter, and I have Steve Laurelman. I got a righty forward, I got a lefty forward, I got a defenseman who was a former first-round pick in Belter, and I got a third goaltender in Orleman, just because, Matt Vince is 41, and
Don't you
he is still in the best shape of his entire life, but he is 41, so things can happen. I'd rather keep a third goaltender. They have done it in the past. Shanahan has been the third goaltender on the practice squad in the past when Doug Buchan was the backup, so it's not unheard of for them to do that. For my bubble guys, though, if I were to pick top 3 guys that I think could happen, like Dylan Robinson, he's technically still on the IR right now. They haven't activated him. So if he starts the season on the IR, I have Belter bumping up to the active roster, and my first bubble guy is Carter McKenzie, so I have him moving up to the practice squad. So again, there's these lists out there that we're not going to dive into because we're not behind the scenes. We don't know everything that's going on. We don't know players that are coming into camp hurt. We don't know players that are going to be hurt in camp because we can't see the future. We don't know if there's going to be players that hold out. That whole situation. So there could be a situation for a lot of these guys that are on the bubbles to make this team and in one way or another be on the active roster or the practice squad. But my top 3 guys for the bubble guys, Carter McKenzie, Dalton Solver, and Evan Constantinopoulos. So those are my top 3 bubble guys. But again, after that, you got Watch, you got Bloomberg, you got Carty, you got Sharkey. Those are all guys that you've invested draft capital in and are going to use this training camp in the preseason to develop them further. Again, this is why I wish there was more spots. I can't dwell on it anymore because there's not going to be unless they somehow change the rules coming up and maybe that's something that the teams know that I don't. That's why they kept all these players and signed all these players. I have no idea because I'm not behind the scenes, but for the practice squad, LaRue, Brandon Robinson, Belter, Orleman, and then my bubble guys I already mentioned. So really, that super early October, we really only, out of all these, on the 25 of the 34, we differ on one player, Phil. You have Watts, I have LaRue.
Yeah, and then, again, Frank Brown's going to be interesting to me as far as I think someone like a Belter could push, or even like you said, like a Bloomberg. I don't know if Bloomberg can really make the jump all the way to being, like you mentioned last year, they had 4 transition, only 8 defense. Can a Bloomberg, do they want to add an extra transition player who can play a little bit of defense, play a little bit of both, and maybe chop out someone like a Frank Brown, so have 8 defensemen and an additional transition player? Who knows? It's going to be interesting. There's definitely some small, slight wiggle room for this team. Not really much of any, but there is a smidgen of wiggle room, and there's like 1 or 2 spots. And again, even seeing a player like Carter McKenzie, who I like quite a bit, and even Dalton Solver, who I like quite a bit, on the bubble not making this team is just, it's hard to see. It is a little bit depressing because these are players that we really like, and seeing them on the outside looking in, I mean, we know that this team's loaded with talent, and they have even more talent coming into this camp. It's going to be a lot of first-round draft picks, a lot of draft picks in general that are going to be pushing real hard for some of these spots, and some of these players are going to get cut or traded that we are pretty big fans of. So it's always going to be a little bit of a bummer, but we will have to see. Like you said, it's October. We'll see how it all shakes out. Yeah,
who will be my this year's Zach Miller that I really wanted to make the team, and then he gets cut, and he's over in Rochester now. So, Phil, is there anything else with this episode you would like to add to it before we shut it down for another week, and we'll talk again next Wednesday?
Other than the fact that after you said October, it is October, that kind of came up quick.
It is spooky season, Phil. That was on my whiteboard.
Happy October. Happy spooky season.
It is spooky season, and time for the dentist to capitalize on all the candy that they give to the children. Well, not dentists, but other people give candy to the children. I'm going to shut it down now.
Okay.
Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on Twitter at Buffalo Sports Code. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.